In 2007, while most people were still buying DVDs and cable companies ruled living rooms with iron fists, a small Israeli startup called Boxee had a revolutionary idea that seems almost quaint today. They wanted to turn any television into a smart entertainment hub that could pull content from the internet, local files, and streaming services into one beautiful, easy-to-navigate interface. This wasn't just another media player or set-top box. Boxee envisioned a future where your TV would be the center of a connected entertainment ecosystem, where you could watch Hulu, browse your personal media library, check social media, and discover new content all from your couch. The irony is almost painful to contemplate now. Boxee essentially invented what we today call a smart TV, complete with apps, streaming integration, and social features, only to watch every major TV manufacturer, streaming company, and tech giant steal their playbook and drive them into extinction. The story begins with Avner Ronen, a former Israeli military intelligence officer who co-founded Boxee with Tom Harrell and Aidan Cohen. Ronen had previously worked at Orb Networks, where he gained experience in media streaming technology, but he saw a bigger opportunity brewing. The television industry was ripe for disruption, stuck in an antiquated model where content flowed one way from broadcasters to passive viewers. Netflix was still primarily a DVD-by-mail service, YouTube was barely 2 years old, and Hulu had just launched with a fraction of today's content. Most importantly, there was no unified way to access digital content on your television. You had your cable box for live TV, maybe a DVD player, and if you were technically savvy, you might connect a laptop to watch online videos. Boxee launched as a free software application built on the XBMC Media Center platform, designed to aggregate content from multiple sources into a single visually appealing interface. The software could organize your personal media files, stream content from services like Hulu and Netflix when they made their APIs available, display photos from Flickr, and even integrate social features so you could see what your friends were watching. Users needed to install the software on a computer connected to their TV, but the experience was unlike anything else available. The interface featured large, beautiful thumbnails, smooth navigation with a remote control, and sophisticated content discovery algorithms that recommended shows and movies based on your viewing habits. What made Boxee truly ahead of its time was how it approached the fundamental challenge of television in the internet age. Traditional TV was about channels and schedules, but Boxee understood that the future was about content and convenience. Their software created what they called a social media center, where entertainment became interactive and personalized. Users could rate shows, share recommendations with friends, and discover new content through social connections rather than just network programming schedules. The platform supported an enormous range of file formats and streaming protocols, making it a universal translator for digital content. You could watch a video file stored on your computer, stream a show from Hulu, check your Facebook feed, and browse YouTube videos without ever changing inputs or switching devices. Boxee also introduced the concept of apps for television, launching an SDK that allowed developers to create custom applications for the platform. This app ecosystem included weather widgets, newsreaders, games, and specialized video players for niche content sources. By 2009, Boxee had attracted hundreds of thousands of users and raised $4 million in Series A funding from Union Square Ventures and Spark Capital. The platform supported Windows, Mac, and Linux, making it accessible to a broad range of technically inclined early adopters who were frustrated with the limitations of traditional television. However, Boxee quickly discovered that being ahead of your time in the entertainment industry means going to war with some of the most powerful and litigious companies in the world. Content providers like NBC Universal and Fox were terrified of losing control over how their programming was distributed and consumed. They had spent decades building a profitable ecosystem based on advertising rates tied to scheduled programming and didn't want viewers watching shows on demand without commercials. In September 2008, Hulu blocked Boxee from accessing its content, claiming that their terms of service only allowed streaming through web browsers, not third-party applications. This was devastating for Boxee because Hulu integration was one of their most popular features and a key differentiator from other media center software. NBC Universal, which owned a stake in Hulu, was particularly aggressive in pushing for the block, arguing that Boxee threatened their television advertising revenue model. The move sparked widespread criticism from users and tech journalists who saw it as anti-competitive and consumer hostile, but Hulu maintained the restriction despite massive backlash. This was the first major sign that Boxee's vision of an open, unified entertainment platform would face fierce resistance from incumbent media companies. The Hulu situation highlighted a fundamental tension that would plague Boxee throughout its existence. Content owners wanted to maintain tight control over distribution, while consumers wanted convenience and choice. Undeterred by the Hulu setback, Boxee decided to double down on their vision by creating their own hardware. In January 2010, they announced the Boxee Box, manufactured by D-Link and featuring a distinctive cube design with one corner cut off at an angle. The device ran a customized version of the Boxee software and was designed to be a plug-and-play solution that didn't require users to dedicate a computer to their entertainment system. The Boxee Box included dual-band wireless, Ethernet connectivity, HDMI output, USB ports for external storage, and support for 1080p HD video playback. Priced at $199, it was positioned as a premium alternative to simpler streaming devices like the Roku, which launched in 2008 with more limited functionality. The hardware launch represented a massive bet that consumers were ready for a unified entertainment platform and that Boxee could succeed where others had failed by combining superior software with purpose-built hardware. The device supported local media playback, streaming from various online sources, and maintained all the social and discovery features that made the software version popular. Boxee also negotiated deals with content providers like Revision 3, Vimeo, and Pandora to ensure the box launched with compelling streaming options, though major services like Netflix and Hulu remained elusive due to ongoing disputes over third-party access. The Boxee Box launched in November 2010 to generally positive reviews from tech journalists and early adopters, but it faced immediate challenges in a rapidly evolving market. Netflix had finally agreed to provide an app for the platform, which was a major victory, but the implementation was clunky compared to native Netflix apps on other devices. More importantly, Apple had launched the second-generation Apple TV for $99, significantly undercutting Boxee's price point while offering a more polished, if more limited, experience. Google introduced Google TV around the same time, backed by partnerships with Sony and Logitech, creating additional competition in the emerging smart TV space. Amazon launched its first streaming video service in 2011 and began developing its own streaming hardware. The market that Boxee had essentially created was becoming increasingly crowded with competitors who had deeper pockets and better relationships with content providers. Sales of the Boxee Box were disappointing, moving only around 200,000 units over 2 years despite generally positive user feedback. The device suffered from performance issues with certain video files, occasional software bugs, and a complex user interface that was powerful but intimidating for mainstream consumers. Perhaps most damaging, the major streaming services continued to resist integration with third-party platforms, leaving Boxee with a compelling vision but limited premium content. By 2011, it became clear that Boxee's original strategy was being systematically undermined by the very companies they had inspired to innovate. Television manufacturers like Samsung, LG, and Sony began building smart TV platforms directly into their sets, incorporating many of the features that Boxee had pioneered. These smart TVs included app stores, streaming service integration, social features, and internet connectivity. But they had something Boxee couldn't offer: direct partnerships with content providers and TV manufacturers. Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube were willing to develop apps for Samsung and LG smart TVs because these companies weren't seen as threats to the existing media ecosystem. Meanwhile, streaming device manufacturers like Roku continued to expand their content partnerships and lower their prices, making dedicated media center hardware a harder sell for consumers. Apple TV evolved into a more capable platform with each iteration, leveraging Apple's ecosystem and content relationships to provide a smoother user experience than third-party solutions could match. Amazon began developing what would become Fire TV, and Google continued investing in Google TV despite early setbacks. Even cable companies started introducing their own streaming apps and on-demand services to compete with cord-cutting alternatives. Boxee found itself squeezed from every direction. Content providers wouldn't work with them, hardware manufacturers were building competing solutions, and consumer electronics companies could undercut their pricing through economies of scale. Recognizing that the consumer market was becoming untenable, Boxee made a dramatic pivot in 2012 by focusing on cable and telecommunications companies rather than individual consumers. They developed Boxee TV, a cloud DVR service designed to help cable operators compete with Netflix and other streaming services by providing more flexible, modern television experiences. The service allowed users to record shows to the cloud, watch content on multiple devices, and access programming from anywhere with an internet connection. This was actually prescient technology that anticipated the shift toward cloud-based TV services that companies like YouTube TV and Hulu Live would later popularize. Boxee TV launched with several cable operators and received generally positive feedback for its technical capabilities and user interface design. However, the cable industry moved slowly and was resistant to the kind of fundamental changes that Boxee's technology enabled. Many cable executives were still skeptical of cloud-based services and worried about cannibalizing their existing revenue streams from traditional set-top box rentals and premium channel packages. The shift to enterprise customers also meant abandoning the passionate user community that had supported Boxee since its early days, alienating many of the advocates who had helped build the brand's reputation in tech circles. The end came swiftly and somewhat anticlimactically in July 2013, when Samsung acquired Boxee for approximately $30 million. This was far less than the company had raised in venture funding and represented a significant loss for early investors who had believed in Boxee's vision of transforming television. Samsung was primarily interested in Boxee's engineering talent and technology patents, which they integrated into their smart TV platform and streaming video initiatives. Most of Boxee's team, including founder Avner Ronen, joined Samsung's research and development division in New York, where they worked on smart TV software and streaming video technology. The acquisition effectively ended Boxee as an independent platform, and Samsung discontinued support for existing Boxee devices within a few years. Users who had purchased Boxee boxes found themselves with expensive paperweights as the software stopped receiving updates and streaming services ended compatibility with the platform. The passionate community of Boxee enthusiasts dispersed to other platforms, with many eventually settling on solutions like Plex, Kodi, or mainstream streaming devices from Roku, Apple, and Amazon. The irony was palpable. Samsung, one of the TV manufacturers that had copied Boxee's smart TV concept, had acquired the original innovator and buried their technology within a corporate development division. Looking back, Boxee's story is both tragic and instructive about the brutal realities of disrupting entrenched industries. They correctly identified that television was ready for an internet-enabled transformation and built technology that was genuinely ahead of its time. Their software introduced concepts like app ecosystems for TVs, social viewing features, universal content search, and cloud-based media libraries that are now standard features across virtually every streaming device and smart TV platform. Netflix's interface today looks remarkably similar to what Boxee pioneered in 2008, complete with personalized recommendations, social integration, and multi-device synchronization. The Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Google Chromecast all borrowed heavily from Boxee's original vision of a unified entertainment hub that could aggregate content from multiple sources. Even traditional cable companies eventually adopted cloud DVR services and streaming apps that were conceptually identical to what Boxee TV offered in 2012. The company's core insight about the future of television was completely correct, but they lacked the resources and industry relationships necessary to execute that vision at scale. They were David fighting multiple Goliaths, including content providers, hardware manufacturers, and platform companies, all of whom had stronger negotiating positions and deeper pockets. The entertainment industry's resistance to third-party innovation ultimately forced Boxee out of the market, but not before every major player had reverse-engineered their ideas and built them into competing platforms. Today's streaming landscape is essentially the world that Boxee envisioned 15 years ago, just controlled by the same corporations that killed the original innovator.